Well, I'd like to open the floor for questions, and we got time for maybe one or two questions. Just a couple questions down the river. Yes, sir.
Okay, I have a question to the pharmacist. How am I going to know the name of my pharmacist?
Okay.
Oh, can you all hear? I have a question to the pharmacist. How am I going to know the name of my pharmacist when he's in a store filling 600 to 800 prescriptions a day, working with 3 techs? He barely ever lifts his head. Not sure if it's a male or a female. How do I get a personal relationship and actually know this individual?
Eugene, I would find a pharmacy where you can do that. And,
Uh,
I mean, really, because there are different places and there are different practices. And if you can't engender the attention of that individual, I would encourage you to go elsewhere.
Well, I understand. I graduated from pharmacy school in 1954, so I do have some experience. But I'm bringing this question up because how about the other Eugenes that don't understand this, that go to these places and don't ever get to see them? And with the state's permission, they have 3 techs. There's one pharmacist supposedly supervising 3 techs, also working and giving people's attention. This, I think, is where organizations should get behind it.
Yeah.
And there's something that should be changed here because the people are being shortchanged.
And I appreciate your comment. Thanks.
Thank you.
If I could weigh in as a pharmacist educator, because I do teach at a school of pharmacy, and one of the things I teach is professional practice as well as communications. The answer to that is, I think, and here I'll switch hats, take my tunic off, put my Men's Health Network consumer activist hat on. The way to get that is demand it. Patients have a right to information. They don't demand it. Pharmacy has not told them that we must counsel. They have skirted around it. I'm very disappointed in the profession. I can see Marsha raising his hand and said, oh, I'm going to slug you later. But consumers, if it's not viewed as a commodity and it's viewed as an important medical intervention, you should be demanding that attention from the pharmacist.
Yes. Well, I got lots of hands up here. Yes, sir.
Sort of opened up a door here talking about teaching pharmacists. You talked about your son being a physician and knowing apparently very little about counterfeit drugs. Do the pharmacists get any training about diversion or counterfeit pharmaceuticals?
Not in my university. I certainly can't speak for all universities. Maybe others on the panel might, but maybe Marsha knows. But not at my university, I'm chagrined to say, but maybe Monday they'll start.
I can say at the University of Texas, they get plenty of training in it.
Say no more. Say no more.
Say no more. They get 10 lectures or more on it.
Yeah.
Everything from supply chain integrity to worldwide counterfeit problems to RFID lectures to serialization of NDC numbers, all of it.
Perfect.
Yes, sir.
My name is Ron Zines. I also teach at College of Pharmacy. Question, okay, we're getting into RFID, whatever it is, a tag or 2D barcodes. The pharmacist is at the end of that chain. I wonder what the focus of pharmacy or the ability of pharmacy to participate when they have to buy RFID readers, perhaps disrupt their normal business practices, which could take time and so forth. So I look at the very bottom. How willing is that very bottom to really get involved?
Okay.
That's my comment or question.
All right. I'll take a shot at it, and Marsh take a shot at it. The equipment to read in our RFID technology is not that expensive in a pharmacy. It's been estimated less than $10K. Even it could be less than that, the transponders and reading it. It actually saves you money in the long run because you could walk into the back door with a carton full of drugs and it will read them all instantly. And if you have the right system, it can download all the information into your Excel spreadsheet and credit your system with the inventory. So it's not like scanning in all kinds of barcodes and stuff in it. So it's very efficient that way. It's not that much. The problem is if you did it, it's the large quantities of drugs that we use in the United States versus Europe or Mexico, because they use unit of use packaging. If we went to unit of use packaging, then we would get all the packages in, right, quantities of 15 or 30s or 60s that are dispensed. But in U.S. distribution system, the pharmacists buy them in hundreds, 500s, thousands, or 2,000s, and that makes it a little bit more difficult for us. But if you were going to change that over, the cost is tremendously higher if you're going to change the whole inventory system over. But I think that's the direction we're going to go, though. I really do. We're going to go the European direction in the future.
Yeah, and I think it's a long-term process, Ron. I mean, part of this is during an implementation, you have to look at the cost-benefit, and you've seen wholesale, I don't mean like wholesale distributors, but across pharmacy in the last decade, you've really seen wholesale change in the kind of systems we use in the stores and in the practices with barcoding and workflow management. I mean, there's been just a huge shift in 10 years. And I can imagine someday that same shift will happen, but it requires a lot of parallel processes. And because this is across the supply chain, it requires a lot of partnerships. It's not like we just can implement it at a pharmacy level. It has to be at the distribution level. It has to be at the manufacturing level. So it's a rather intensive process that has a lot of moving parts.
We're gradually going to RFID. It's just getting many of the wholesalers run RFID systems now. Yeah. Yeah, Jeff?
Yeah, thank you. I'm Jeff Gren from the U.S. Department of Commerce, and I just want to make a comment and ask the panelists for some of their views. But this whole discussion raises issues about globally. In the United States and developed countries, there's clearly a problem with counterfeit medicines. But once you get outside the United States into developing countries, the problem is far greater. You don't have the same type of pharmaceutical distribution system. Many places rely on street vendors, not pharmacists. And public awareness becomes more and more of an issue. I know Partnership for Safe Medicines has been doing some great work in that. But I'd like to get some input from the panel on your views on best ways to deal with this in foreign markets where you don't have the same type of pharmaceutical distribution system and pharmacy system as you do in the United States. Thank you.
Who's going to try that one?
I'll take a quick jump in, and this is with my reporter hat on, and by no means will I ever get near a Pulitzer Prize, so I'm going to say that in deference to Walt. But I do report for a magazine, and I go to a lot of trade shows. And one of the things that struck me most, I was at the biotechnology annual meeting in May in Chicago, and I went to a panel on counterfeit medicines and the reason I went is because they were addressing it globally, and I was absolutely astounded. Lou Kontnick from Amgen was on the panel, who I think many of you know Lou. He was very active in the U.S., back in the day. But there was a gentleman there who was the senior VP of global security for Genzyme, and it struck me as he spoke of when they are developing medications for people in need globally, generally unmet medical conditions, first time to market, how much this planning for potential counterfeiting has to be part of their whole product life cycle management and the relationships that they've developed internationally with regulatory agencies, enforcement agencies. I was stunned. So I guess what I'm saying is I think many manufacturers who operate on a global basis have this very, very elevated, and it's part of their business strategy now. I think the second thing that I would observe is that ultimately, whenever you create an economic incentive for someone to make money, somebody is going to step into that vacuum. And I don't know when it will happen, and this is not my APHA hat, this is my personal hat. We are going to need to start addressing some of these global questions about value and pricing and things of that nature, and there have been some very good meetings and panels on that, and I think ultimately, in my view, that has to happen.
There need to be prosecutions. I mean, there aren't any. I mean, I can go chapter and verse, country from country, where this has been uncovered, where people are trading in counterfeit goods, and almost never are they prosecuted. So that has to be a component, and we can't force countries to prosecute people, but we do have diplomatic relations with most countries in this world, and we need to use our influence to try and make sure that law enforcement authorities respond to these situations, because not only are they hurting people in that country, but as we pointed out here at this meeting, they end up oftentimes, or sometimes, in this country as well. So that's an important component.
There was an interesting blurb in the paper about 2 weeks ago where FDA called out China for not investigating and prosecuting, going after the people who adulterated the heparin and put the chondroitin in it. According to the article, they said that Chinese never went after them and never investigated the problem. And so now they've forced their hand on it and trying to see what they will do with it. It'd be good news. Yes?
Scott Leganga, Partnership for Safe Medicines. The question I had actually for the panelists goes to the changing relationship between physician and patient, but obviously the pharmacist plays a role in that, particularly as you look at the online pharmacy sphere and you're looking at a lot of these dialogues now. So often now, and especially a lot of the work we've done in the developing world, that relationship actually bypasses that physician-patient relationship. The patient is now becoming the purchaser and also the prescriber and the analyzer and the doctor and all those other components, which is great for that information capacity, but maybe not in terms of the diagnosis. Can you guys talk about that and how that relationship maybe could be adjusted, fixed, corrected, et cetera? Thank you.
Anybody?
I will say, I mean, this happened again in Minnesota. We had an individual who chose to test the system. He was one of the largest internet providers of medication, and quite in the face of authorities said, I can do this. And he was eventually successfully prosecuted. He was 25, 30 years old. And many people in our state were killed ordering medication, and it led to the passage of a law in Minnesota, which eventually became, I think, the national model in terms of describing the kind of relationship you needed to be able to develop with a patient in order to prescribe and get medication dispensed over the internet. So I think there have been some protections put in place to do that. But again, how do you go after people who simply don't want to talk to you about their medication needs because they're embarrassed or whatever? And I think it goes back to, again, trying to build that relationship in those cases. Are you going to be successful when you're dealing with somebody who might have an addiction issue or some other issue? I'm not sure, but we're trying.
Yeah. We'll take one more question. Yes, sir. John.
I'm John Glover, Nanogaudian. I have one question, and that question is, I see periodically a lot of anecdotal information in terms of the impact of counterfeit medicines in the United States. Is there any entity or agency who's trying to collect that information so we can get a better idea from a quantifiable standpoint?
Good question.
I'll take a shot at it. There's two data sources. Obviously, the FDA is one data source. But that information is sketchy at times. It's not up to date. It's very difficult to dig it out of the websites. The other information on the extent of counterfeiting, the best source of information is Tom Kubik's organization over here, the Pharmaceutical Security Institute. That's a great source of information globally. And it does cover North America and United States. As far as casualties or problems with the drug, patient problems with the drug, I don't know of a source that documents that. Does anybody in the audience know of a source that documents the deaths or problems with the counterfeit drug trade? It collects it all. I'm unfamiliar with a source that looks at it. The partnership tries to compile newspaper articles worldwide and pieces of it, and quite often I will take pieces worldwide of it and keep a count of them informally for myself, but I don't know of any official place where it's done that. Once in a while we'll see, like the heparin, the heparin problem, they counted 84 deaths to the heparin that came out of FDA. But I don't, it's just newspaper articles I pull up out of them. I don't know of a compendium, a source of information.